Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Good Guys Sports. Back after a 1 week break here in late February, and we are going to be covering a couple of different sports. We're in that period here now between before after the Super Bowl, before March Madness, where a couple different sports going on, a couple of storylines, headlines, things to keep an eye on in all different sports. So we're going to start today though with the return of Uncle Mike's favorite pastime. Yes, baseball season is here. We've mentioned it before. Pitchers and catchers reporting. Spring training games are happening. Lots of exciting things to look forward to. All your favorite baseball publications are putting out their rankings, best free agent acquisitions, etc. But Mike, I know it's always your favorite, your most exciting. Probably opening day is your favorite day of the year, but obviously when you get to see spring training starts, it's always a really exciting time as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. When I was working, my staff always called the opening day the Roby annual skip work day.
Yep.
Um, that's always fun. We open up this year against the Phillies, but tonight, spring training action at 6:05, the Nationals take on the Atlanta Braves.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
About that.
Yeah. So I am of course, I'm always optimistic for the Nationals,
Hmm.
but I'm optimistic this year. I mean, they if there's going to be a surprise team this year in the MLB, it's going to be the Nationals. Uh,
Right.
with
Mhm.
with Wood, Cruz, and Abrams, and they signed a lot of guys on 1 year contracts, and if any of them pan out, uh, we should have a pretty decent year. So it'll be a lot. I think the the National League East is going to be the bruising division this year. You have three teams, Braves, Mets, and the Phillies. Each of them could easily win the division.
Right. It's developing into a bit of an arms race in the
Yeah,
National League East.
yeah. But I think it's all going to be for naught because I think the Dodgers are the hands down favorite to take it all away again this year.
Right. And that's certainly what a lot of the preseason predictions have to say. And it's hard to argue with them, obviously, given the fact that they've only strengthened really to their roster since their
Hmm.
World Series victory
Yeah,
last year. So, from that standpoint, it's hard to pick against the Dodgers in the National League for sure.
yeah.
At the same time, though, it's a little bit more difficult in baseball to repeat. I wouldn't say it's not impossible compared to other sports to go back to back or make it to
Hmm.
back to back World Series. Haven't seen it as much the past couple of seasons though. So
Yeah, there's been a lot of parity in
right,
in baseball. Uh, It'd be interesting to see. Next year is going to be the last year before there's a new collective bargaining agreement, and a lot of interest in what might come of that.
you think
Uh,
there talk of any salary cap restrictions possibly?
Probably so. I mean, you look at the uh, the Dodgers, their tax they're going to have to pay for going over is greater than 10 of the small market teams pay entirety for their payroll. And the Mets pay six teams have a smaller payroll than the Mets salary tax. So there's a lot of interest or concern between the small market teams and the large market teams.
Right.
So
And that's something that I guess has been a characteristic of Major League Baseball for a while is these larger market teams spending, sometimes unwisely,
mhm.
sometimes it has worked out. I think You could tell there's been given the you have to remind me of the name of the Japanese player the Dodgers signed just this past year, but I think once they added him on top of after they made it to the World Series, it was kind of there was it
Yeah,
Roki
yeah.
Sasaki, Roki, I think, right?
Yamamoto is who they signed.
Or Yamamoto.
Yeah, but I think they signed another pitcher from Japan
Yeah, I think
this
that
offseason.
was yeah, Roki Sasaki,
Yeah,
I want to say. Who
and
obviously
as well
they're
as
going.
the Nationals signed a pitcher from Japan as well.
Yeah, so obviously Japan is kind of one of those untapped markets. It seems that
Hmm.
makes you wonder why it wasn't really been utilized more heavily before. Maybe it's just a
Yeah,
good generation of Japanese
yeah.
players coming through right now as well. So
Hmm. Yeah, not to change the subject too much, but the one interesting thing is going to be the automatic balls and strikes.
right, I saw that. Yeah.
Juan Soto made he challenged a call in preseason, and the umpire called it a strike, and he challenged it. Lo and behold, it was a ball. Juan was right, but
So
that's going to
yeah.
be interesting because
So in terms of the specifics of that, it's essentially just so everyone's aware, you can challenge basically a called third strike. Not that if you get caught looking at a third strike, basically you can challenge that and you get a certain number per game, right?
yeah, it's not just the third strike. You can
Okay.
challenge any of the pitches,
So it's
but
any pitch. Okay.
but only the batter or the pitcher or the catcher can challenge. Nobody in the dugout can challenge. You get two challenges per game, and if the challenge is upheld, you keep the two. But it's going to be very interesting with only two challenges per game. You're going to have to strategically call that. Uh, you can't call it for every pitch, but it'll prove interesting.
So that's been confirmed. They're going to roll it out in the regular season as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. As far as I know, they're rolling it out in the regular
Yeah.
season.
Yeah, because I know
Unless,
it was being tested in the minors for a while, so I guess
yeah,
they ended up liking the results.
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
Jackson. What do you make of this? A new rule change in MLB where we have people have been complaining about umpires for a while, right? And asking for automated umpires, robot umpires, even. So I guess this system is kind of somewhere in between, where essentially like a NFL challenge on a pass interference or something, where you can't just do it every time, but it should sounds like a pretty useful change to me. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it does in a lot of ways, and the problem with instant replay of Major League Baseball or for any sports is that how all the technology has changed than it was from the game that you've seen from yesterday. So today's game has really went for a lot with the pitch clock and and really making the and make it and really making the third and second bases a lot more bigger, and then really just and then really and really the timeouts for having the pitcher really really just stay in the game too long. Those things really to me are just kind of a kind of a really in a good or a bad way of the game if you really want to look at it. Whereas the game nowadays of where it was back in the old-fashioned days where today it's really led by a lot of with technology with all of the with all the different play clocks and all the different stuff that goes on the field, whether if a play gets called right or not, and really all this plays into a factor on how this really all turns out. And so I think to me, with all that stuff the game has seen and what it really of how it turns out, it just but and as a fan of the game or a player that who's followed the game, really can show you that there is some good and bad into it. So to me, I just think it's just one of those things that the game where yes, it's really yes, there is change happening in the sport of baseball, but at the same time, whether you like it or not, there's always going to be some changes year after year. And I'm glad you mentioned about the robots of how it's going to be the futuristic for the game. Well, it's going to be a totally different kind of different feel. So you think about it. I mean, technology how it's all changed. Well, I look at it this way. So really, you have a you have something about for like something that's all electric, where really within the next decade you could have all electric vehicles. Well, for most of the time, but in this instance, where you can have robot empires versus regular empires, which I feel like could be the tomorrow's game or the next generation of how this all plays out.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have
So really,
those tools, right?
yeah, right. So really,
Jackson, not
yeah,
so
really,
fast.
Oh, hang on a second.
Not
wait,
so
the way
fast,
that I look
Jackson.
at it is that it's really going to be one of those things that as a fan for the baseball or for the league, really, whether you like it or not, it is there is going to be a change.
Let me ask you this, Jackson. If we use these robots, are we going to leave behind the arguments with the ref? I mean, who's where the general managers aren't going to come out of the dugout and argue with the refs anymore. The players aren't going to turn around and argue with the ref anymore. I
It's
mean, these are
true.
great moments,
I mean, baseball does
The
have the best
pitcher.
arguments. Yeah.
Oh man, are we going to stop clearing the benches too, Mike? Come on, man. This is
Yeah.
traditions.
Earl Weaver's rolling in his grave.
I mean,
How maybe that
maybe
is,
Be like
Coach.
but to answer your question, Blake, it would be like a voiceover for like a deep dramatic robot voice for like
Yeah.
it would be like making a play call, whether if you get it right or wrong, of this
Hey,
deep
Jackson,
of this deep pitched voice making a call for whether the fans can agree with it or not, can agree with it or not.
Jackson, there's a guy named Robert Doan. You may not have heard of him because he's a professor at Liberty University, but he was the youngest, one of my good friends. He was the youngest person to ever officiate or umpire an NCAA Division I baseball game. Okay. And his research focused on um, assessing umpires at the minor league level. The MLB and the minors were interested in buying it. But what I'll say is this. Part of his umpiring was connecting with the catchers, talking to them, talking to the batters when they walked up. And so, is there a little bit of a relationship built? And maybe if you're a jerk and don't want to talk to them, do you miss a few calls? I don't know. I love the human element to the game. Mike,
Yeah.
tradition is baseball of any other sport is tradition, right? So I get a little nervous when we do anything different. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I
I
think that's why they only allowed 2 challenges per game
like that.
they're definitely
and
easing into it.
only the players, so no chirping in the dugout.
I like that. Are there going to be
So
signs, Mike? Is there going to be a look to the are they allowed to turn around and look at
I
the
think because I saw on the replay, the Soto went like that, put his hand on his helmet and patted a couple times. I think that's probably going to be the sign.
holy smokes. We're going to have signs to go, man.
Yeah,
This is
So you
great.
so you so you're saying that basically the manager can't
the
challenge it has
manager
to.
can't challenge it.
So
Only
there's probably going to be a
only the
scenario
players.
where a player like blows the challenge way earlier than a
Yeah,
manager and he gets chewed out by his manager,
he's
right?
going to get chewed out by
Oh,
his
okay.
manager.
Back to better. Okay, so we're still gonna have arguments.
So
Just
you
he's gonna
might
be different
it's going to
different
be
people now.
intra-team arguments,
Yeah,
yeah.
So is there gonna be look for the guy in the bright neon shirt standing in the outfield who automatically stands up and starts waving his hands with the microphone in his ear whenever a bad call is made.
yeah.
The player glances at
Yeah,
him.
surely there's going to be some sort of like underhanded signs about like, yeah,
Well,
he should
there's like a time limit. They only have a few seconds to
5 second rule.
challenge it.
Hmm.
Yeah, 5 second. Yeah.
So
Interesting.
listen
I
for the
my
trash
whole
cans
life is
again.
around the 5 second rule.
Exactly. That's
So
interesting. Yeah, that'll be
yeah,
very interesting to see how that.
We can all relate to that, whether as sports fans and stuff that we can all and disagree on whether we like it or not.
yeah,
That's really the beauty of sports for you.
yeah. There's another rule change to watch this year. and they've increased the penalty for the shift violation.
Oh.
So, for example, if the shortstop is on the second base side of the infield, and he plays the ball and throws the batter out at first, what'll end up happening is if the umpires don't catch it, or if they call for a replay, they challenge it, and comes to find out it is a shift violation. What happens is the batter will be awarded first base, and
Hmm.
anybody else on base moves up. Where in the past, if something like that happened, the batter would just be awarded a ball.
Hmm. So it's a
So they,
balk. It's a balk rule. If you balk, you advance, right?
yeah, so they treat it as if it was a balk, and the fielder is given an error.
Give them a yellow card too. Bring some soccer into this. Throw up a little yellow card, Blake. How about
Tackle baseball.
No, yeah, it's actually it's funny you mentioned the soccer referees because kind of when I hear about the automatic, the strike challenging and automated umpires, it kind of almost reminds me of the way that soccer does the refereeing now, where basically you have one guy on the field kind of managing everything, and then he has like an earpiece and he's communicating with the video assistant referee like up in the booth. So I'm almost wondering with Major League Baseball if they get to a point where you just have one umpire maybe like in the middle of
Hmm.
the field to call like the people in or out, or that can even be automated too, but basically there to communicate, and then he's talking to like three or four people up in a booth or in like the MLB refereeing New York or something like that. So there's still one person that somebody can yell at on the field, but he's always like in communication with everything. So that could be something that maybe they could take from soccer.
But
Yeah.
guys, who am I gonna yell? Call it fair, Blue. Call it fair, Blue. Who am I gonna
Yeah.
yell that to
They might have
now?
to wheel out like a boxing dummy with a microphone on it to make calls to. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a strike zone, not an end zone.
That's good. I heard that one.
And
That's
you know what,
good.
as well, they're actually not to move off of baseball, but they are implementing a new Hawkeye system in the NFL next year as well, which I personally have been complaining about first down marking for quite a while, and the
Mm,
fact that it's just two guys, two middle-aged men just looking at a line and saying like that's where it's supposed to be.
mm,
And now they're going to do more of apparently they have, which I don't know why they've been sitting on this technology for so long, but they're going to be have more precise spotting for essentially marking the ball after. I don't know if it's just for first down or just marking the ball
Is yeah,
in
for
general.
first down. So the chain
Yeah,
gang is backup.
mm.
correct. Which seems like a pretty obvious thing to do. I guess maybe it's
Yeah,
easier said than done in terms of tracking technology, but
yeah. But
that'll be a welcome
the
Ball will
change.
human
shoot up.
element is the referees still are the ones that spot the ball, and are the ones that determine forward momentum.
They
So
should
there's still,
they should call it the Jadeveon Clowney rule.
and that is
The when they didn't get the first down, and so
uh-huh.
Jadeveon Clowney knocked the
Oh
Michigan
yeah.
helmet off, and they were so angry because the ball clearly was past the first down, and they didn't award it to him in the ball
It's
game. It's
yeah.
an outback ball,
It's
and
just like the
Jadeveon Clowney got
arbitrary
pissed
like
off.
rolling out the chains going like
Yeah.
that and the ref looks at it and he's like that. But it's just so yeah, it's just
And there's such
very
pivotal plays. There's such
exactly. It's such
important
a big thing to
plays.
just like look at it and guess basically. So
Yeah.
it's a that would be I think a welcome change if they're able to execute it right from
It's the
that
Josh
sense.
Allen rule.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm.
Hmm, yeah.
But bringing it back to spring training as well before we move off of baseball, I'm sure we'll do a full breakdown season preview once we get closer and closer to opening day. But any acquisitions or moves that have been intriguing? I think we mentioned briefly when the Juan Soto contract. I don't think we were able to do a full breakdown on that when that happened. That's obviously the eye-catching winter off-season move of MLB. Obviously, the Dodgers adding another Japanese weapon to their arsenal as well, so they're going to be heavy. I think interestingly enough, the Braves been pretty quiet. Phillies have added a couple of pieces. So like we mentioned earlier, the NL East is certainly going to be another slugfest. I think the AL East as well. The Yankees obviously lost Soto, but they made a couple of moves to try to fill that gap a little bit. So they're always going to spend money. Baltimore's got a fun young team as well. I think Boston actually made a
Yeah.
couple of interesting moves. I think we mentioned
Bergman,
the Bregman move
Bregman, yeah.
a couple of weeks ago. And they made a couple other interesting moves as well.
Hmm.
So there might be on the resurgence there in Boston as
Yeah.
well. So that division will be interesting as well, per usual.
Well, Yankees signing Freed.
Right. Right. And it was, I don't like seeing him go, but at the same time, he had a lot of injury issues. So
Yeah.
I can definitely foresee a scenario where the Yankees fans get frustrated with him if he ends up missing time, but
What
talented
about
pitcher though.
Yeah.
what
Well,
about
if Gold,
Detroit?
yeah.
They're doing good in every other sport. Are they going to be good in baseball as well?
The Tigers,
Yeah.
well, they ended up being a bit of a surprise package last year, right? In the postseason.
Yeah.
So
Well, the Tigers got Flaherty back. They got uh they got some good arms.
yeah, they signed Gleyber Torres, I think, as
Hmm.
well, and I think Alex Cobb to they bolstered for their
Hmm.
starting lineup, and they also benefit from being in a weaker division as well. So,
Yeah.
which is how kind of I say weaker division, and I'm pretty sure that two teams ended up winning playoff series last year from the AL
Yeah.
Central. So I
Well,
probably
a lot
shouldn't
of
say
the
that, but
prognosticators say the Twins are going to win the AL Central, but
Mhm.
I think
I
yeah.
I think the Dodgers got I mean the Tigers got a good chance. I like the way they were playing at the end of last year.
Listen, Mike, it's Detroit's year to come really close and not win it in every sport. They did it in football. They're looking good in basketball. They're on a streak right now to do really good but not win it all. And maybe they can do the same with baseball.
Yeah.
Get close and just not win it all.
So I guess the Red Wings are just keeping up the tradition.
I don't know, Blake. Yeah, I think if you ask Mike's Commanders, they would say Detroit didn't get very close at all to winning the championship. No, but they'll be yeah, Dan Campbell's Lions certainly will have something to say next year as well. But
Yeah.
um, any other interesting MLB off-season notes that anybody interesting acquisitions, things to look out for that anybody noticed past couple months?
I'm gonna go try to put some boots on the ground soon. I'm gonna go try to watch some Braves in Sarasota. I'm gonna go try to
Nice.
put some boots on
Yeah,
the
you have to
ground.
give us a report, see what the mood is. I know I think for the Braves it'll be a case of getting players back healthy and not so much splashy acquisitions in the offseason because that's injuries are kind of what derailed them last year. So that will be the main key for them, I think.
Mike, give us the update on dates. Give us, are they there? I thought it was in March. They started in March.
Well, they do start in March. Was it the 27th? Uh, is opening day, but the opening day for Major League Baseball is in Tokyo this year. I want to say to March 18th. Dodgers and the Cubbies play in
Spring
Tokyo.
training is the opening day is February. No?
Well, spring training opening day is
Yeah,
in
it's
February.
been going
They've
on
Okay.
for like a week, I think now. Yeah,
Yeah.
spring training.
Okay.
The Nationals already played 3 games. Their fourth game is tonight. Uh, but yeah, the opening day itself, Major League Baseball open up in Tokyo.
That's
And
cool.
and and by the way, that will be a 6 a.m. wake up call for first pitch for us here in the East Coast.
Well, that's good. My dogs are always up at 5, so I'll be ready.
Is that the
Perfect.
Dodgers? It
Well,
would make
hopefully
sense if
you'll
that's the
Yeah,
Dodgers, right?
that's the
Yeah, yeah.
Dodgers. Yeah,
yeah, well
And
hopefully
food.
you'll yeah, well hopefully you'll get up and
Shohei.
yeah, well hopefully you'll get up and get your coffee ready to watch that game on TV in front of the cozy couch that morning.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I did
Abs-
what the ticket prices are on that. I can't imagine you're getting they are gonna go nuts for that game, right?
Yeah, I think if it's any other team than the Dodgers, it wouldn't be, it would still be popular. But the fact that the Dodgers have, I think, what, like
Three Japanese players.
insanely popular Japanese players. So yeah, the place is going
Yeah.
to be crazy for the Dodgers. Oh wait, don't
Yep.
the Cubs have one too? Don't they have an
Yeah.
all-star?
They got a
Yeah,
Japanese
what's
pitcher
the
as well.
pitcher? Yeah, he was actually a really interesting. I liked watching him last year as well because um he just had like a really interesting backstory, I
Yeah.
think.
The
Um,
Cubbies are going to have a good team this year.
yeah, they're always competitive for sure. Yeah. Yeah, Shota Amanga. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. So it, interesting. So the one other thing that before we move on to our next topic in our topic in our sports show is that I want to point out that yes, we know about the National Spring Training down in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Um, is the spring training home location to be exact? But I remember when I was a kid, the whole family used to go on a used to go down to Florida on a spring break on a spring break trip that we would go to this place called Space Coast Stadium, the home of the Florida Manatees. And I remember going there, the whole family when we were a little kid. We used to go to the Space Coast area in this little private beach area, but my biggest memory of going to a baseball game, and although I wasn't involved in spring training, that the whole family used to go down to check out this every year when I was a little kid to check out the Manatee Stadium down in the Space Coast Stadium. Remember that, Blake? The whole family went down there together with the whole family. I mean, I mean, I had a great I had a lot of great memories. Got a free souvenir ball, met some players, and went the whole
certainly, certainly.
had a great had a had a great time together, right?
Absolutely, yeah. A little baseball in the spring baseball in the state of Florida is always brings back good memories of childhood for sure. Yeah, so
Yes.
happy to have some of that back for sure.
Well, I remember it too well, Blake, and I'm
Indeed. All right, I think we should jump to a topic that we haven't covered enough of these past couple months, and I
Hey
want to
Blake,
talk.
not so fast, not
Oh,
so
you got me.
fast. Hold
What's
on
up?
a second.
woo.
We got an update, guys. Ticket the cheapest you're gonna get in the that Tokyo game
Hmm.
uh is gonna be about $2,500 for the nosebleed seats to watch Shohei play the Cubs. But here's an interesting fact, Mike, and I don't know if you knew this. It looks like they are playing a local Japanese team, the Yomiuri Giants. And then it looks like they're going to play the Hanshin Tigers as well. Did you know that
A couple
before
exhibition
No.
games. That's fun.
Wow. I did not know
and
that.
and to watch the local teams, their local teams play the LA Dodgers, you're still going to pay $1,000 to watch that.
Wow.
That's kind of cool. I like when they play that's a really cool concept, playing the local teams.
Yeah. I remember
So,
years ago they used to the NFL champions would always play the college seniors.
oh, I love I wish that would come back. Or at least the worst team in the NFL play. And Blake, we got to talk about this in a minute too. But after you talk about your next subject, but did you see where they're trying to relegate? They're trying to bring relegation into the United States. Have you seen this?
Yes, no, actually, yeah, we can. That was on my list. Was the MLS season starting up? So we can jump into a little American soccer here for sure. Yeah. So the announcement of, I guess it was an existing league, the USL, basically second tier, third tier U.S. soccer, men's soccer below the MLS has basically announced a new system where they're going to be adding in a like promotion and relegation, which is kind of a big touch point for a lot of soccer fans, where all the main European leagues, a lot of other leagues as well, have this system of if the worst team goes to the second tier league and then the second tier league gets promoted to the big league. Right now, the MLS, Major League Soccer, where Messi plays and all that, operates more like a standard American sports where there's no relegation. They're like franchise kind of things. So this USL, I guess, is under new ownership, new structure. They're revamping it into like a USL 1, USL 2, and they're planning to kind of revamp it and give it a more of a European style promotion relegation and add a couple of new interesting elements to it. So yeah, I did see that, Blake. It seems like an interesting aspect. I can certainly see if they do it right as being a fun rival, but I know the MLS always has a lot of buzz too. So it'll be interesting to see maybe if they end up collaborating there at some point. But Are you excited for the Charlotte FC kicking off here though? You got high hopes for the guys there in the Queen City?
Yeah, but Jackson Gerke's Atlanta, the Atlanta team's coming. It's not a great team to start off your home opener with because Atlanta's dangerous. They got a great team, and not only that, they got massive soccer fans. They travel extremely well, and their section is actually right next to where we sit, and they're loud. They travel well, they're extremely loud, and it's a big rivalry. So it's a great game to start off with. But fun fact, guess who's going to sound the siren at the Carolina Hurricanes game the following day on Sunday?
Who's that?
None other than the Golden Glove goalie of the year, Christian Kalina, will be in
Oh,
Raleigh
wow.
down in the siren. So we're going to try to see Jack at some point on Sunday. And yeah, so he will
Very
be
exciting.
cranking the siren on Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be big expectations for Charlotte FC, given obviously great season for Christian, a couple of big acquisitions as well, and the manager Coach Smith progressing well there. So, but like you said, I watched a little bit of I saw Atlanta's first result as well in one of their other competitions. They made a couple of they brought in a new striker. They got a new coach. Um, lots of exciting teams. Think about the MLS designed, similar to say like a NFL type structure where there's a lot more parity. So you don't have, the likes of, Barcelona and Manchester City, kind of these like super teams. It's theoretically a lot of the big players do play for the same teams, but a lot of these teams have competitive. Uncle Mike's DC United just a couple breaks go their way, and all of a sudden they find their way in the cup final. So it should be an interesting year in the MLS, and certainly one to some big names to keep an eye on for sure in the league.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's especially when the battle of, as you well know, Blake, being on the ground where you are for this rivalry, even though those fans travel very well, like you said, that they call this the Battle of I-85 for a reason, meaning those fans will those fans will travel there very easily. So it's definitely makes things a lot more easier um for those fans to travel well, because given the fact that they only have to travel only about a 2 hours away compared to any other venue that they travel. So having having traveled there most of my life,
Jackson,
and I know what it's like, and
Jackson, who are you pulling for?
that's really right, and that's really how this all plays out for those for both of these rivals and these teams.
Who
Who
are
am
you
I
pulling
pulling
for,
for, Blake?
Jackson? Charlotte FC or
I'm
Atlanta? What's Atlanta's
I'm
name?
going to be
Atlanta United
I'm going to be pulling for
FC.
Charlotte FC
Let's
slightly
go.
Ooh.
Let's go.
close match.
Guy lives in North Carolina for a couple of years and he forgets where he comes from, huh? I'm going
Well,
He
with the
forgot where he went cheer for Atlanta teams when he lived in Atlanta.
very true,
The
very
Steelers
that's
true.
belong
because
with
we've
the
lived there most of my life, and we always root for hometown
He's
teams.
more of a Silverbacks guy, yeah.
Well, I remember those days very well.
You
Having
know what?
covered
I'm
them
going for
with me and my sister being former players on that for this club league.
I'm going for
I
the
know too well.
ATL United all the way. I liked what I saw. Keep an eye out for their new striker, Emmanuel Latte Lath, I believe it's pronounced. They bought him from England, the second tier, Middlesbrough, and he looked sharp on his debut. I don't know if Zaha will be playing for Charlotte. I think he might have missed the first game, but if he's in there as well, I think he's going to play. Yeah, I think he's ready to play. So Wilfred Zaha will be itching to get on the score sheet as well for Charlotte. So definitely a big game to keep an eye on there for sure. A brewing rivalry here in the southeast of MLS.
Blake, do you know if the Carolina Football Club in Raleigh would they be a tier one? team if they do launch if once they launch their new teams, or would they be tier two?
Yeah, so I think they would be the top tier. So North Carolina FC, yeah, their season will be starting here soon as well. And so I believe basically uh the way it would work was the sort of the bigger teams that were existing in the current system would be part of that like top um, top league, and then below it they'd have like essentially a league where you can sort of naturally progress teams and build up with it and stuff like that. So yeah, North Carolina FC would be in there. A couple of other teams like I think Charleston Battery might be in there. Pittsburgh has a team, a few things like that. So it's definitely going to be not it's still going to be something to grow because obviously they can't pay their players the same as MLS and the structure is fairly new, but certainly I think people are excited about the idea of a USL, like a new league to rival MLS, because maybe people I think people like MLS, but I certainly myself I've gotten a little frustrated with some of the structure and the changes. It feels like they kind of change MLS changes its structure and its rules and its teams like every year, so it's a little bit hard to follow. And some of the format changes, like when they moved to Apple and they adjusted the playoff format, so it's like one game and three games and stuff like that. So I think there is room for competition. So a new league like that certainly very interesting for me. But at the same time, Major League Soccer is still a very fun league to follow with a lot of big players. So certainly we wanted to keep an eye on throughout the year.
Absolutely.
So my next topic I wanted to touch upon was a little bit of hockey. We haven't talked about a lot of hockey. I thought maybe we could do a little bit of a National Hockey League check-in. Mike mentioned probably the biggest storyline in the NHL. But before we do that, I do have to mention because I was off last week and I was in the great country of Canada, who happened to be playing in a little tournament called the Four Nations Face-Off. And what a tournament it was. I don't think a lot of people had high expectations or knew exactly what this tournament was, other than the fact that it was replacing the All-Star game this year. Obviously, and so it was essentially just an All-Star team of players from US, Canada, Finland, and Sweden. And I think a lot of people ended up getting really into it, myself included, particularly after that first USA versus Canada fight where the gloves were dropped extremely early, and it was clear that that the players were very passionate on both sides, and Sweden and Finland as well. Intense games with excellent players. It ended up being a fantastic tournament, and I was actually watching the final in Canada to see Canada win the gold medal, which is very exciting. But anybody else check out the Four Nations and was pretty impressed by it? Because I sure was.
I think every single league out there, baseball, MLB, NFL, I think NBA, I think every league was shook by the hype around it, by the viewership, by the Twitter presence, social media. I think every league is shaking their heads thinking, well, what do we do now? Does baseball, do we do in Mexico, Canada or Tokyo, Japan? Like, I think every league's out there thinking, well, how do we replicate this? Because, man, it was special, Blake. I mean, everybody was dialed in, hockey fans or not. It was good. It was incredible.
NHL stole the Super Bowl.
Well, well, two words to answer your question, Mike. The World Baseball Classic. They don't play this tournament every year. Well, to your point on the Four Nations tournament, yes, I didn't see much of it, but I was definitely shook by the hockey fight between Canada and US. But we know how these teams do not and dislike each other one bit, depending on what side you're on. We all know what we all trust me, we all know what that's like. But to your point on how really hockey did things different compared to all the other four major pro sports. Well, the World Baseball Classic, the two words that I just mentioned, they don't play this tournament every year. They only play it like every 3 or 4 years. So to me, baseball should do something like this every year for what the NHL just did recently. The NBA All-Star Game took place out in San Francisco Bay Area, which they did this year. But the basketball and hockey and football, I mean, to your point of doing to doing this different format compared to how the other pro sports do it, well, I'm all in. I think the leagues are just really are saying to themselves, I can't believe we missed out and they did something different compared to what we did. So really, I think what they should do is do what the NHL did and do this global nations head to head between the two countries or whatever, no matter the sport. They should do like a head to head on tournament and really do it between the different seedings between the top 1 and 10 seeds for each round. They should do this for every single sport so that way they don't have to worry about the ratings of the NBA All-Star game and the MLB All-Star game and do all that and maybe the Pro Bowl can be one that can be added that those sports could be really something that the sports fan could really want something different to enjoy and just sit back and just want to see some change and I think they should really go that route and make the sport and make something that a fan and 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 a sports team really for what they cheer for.
Jackson, let me ask you guys this. Do you think Russia your USSR or whatever, you think they're a little salty? They didn't get a an invite to this four or maybe next year or next time Five Nations tournament? Think I mean, when you think hockey, you think Russia, right? Am I crazy?
No, I
Yeah,
don't think you
they
are,
definitely
but
would have had a competitive team, but I don't think they're ever gonna
No.
take part of the tournament given the current political climate. But somebody like Ovechkin obviously would have been a big part of that tournament.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
um,
yeah, they're one of those countries that have so much issues going on.
But hey, Jackson, sports bring us together. That's the one thing
Yeah.
that solves. Imagine ending the war because of hockey. Hockey ends the war. I mean, how cool would that be? You
yeah,
know?
no, it was
That would be very special if they could somehow get this saga and just
yeah.
get this out of the way and hope that they can really
No, it was a really good tournament though.
Yeah.
Like
something for sports fans to
Jackson,
really care about. I agree.
did you watch the final, Jackson, and what did you think of it?
Well, I didn't see the highlights or watch any of it, but from but from what I but from my biggest takeaways from it is that it was a exciting overtime thriller finish by Team Canada, and they somehow were trailing and most of the part of the game, and somehow tied it and found a way in the end to win it all. And give them a lot of credit. I think Team Canada deserves it, and they win another title yet again. And good for Team Canada, and good for Team Canada to get the rematch and get revenge from Team USA. And I think that Team Canada really does deserve another gold medal.
I'm looking forward to next winter's Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, if this is what the kind of preview of the kind
That
of
was,
hockey that we're gonna
yep,
get, then
yep.
I'm not sure we'll get as many fights in the Olympics though. I feel like for some reason in the Olympics they don't fight as much because it has prestige, but
Well,
maybe
it's they're all going to be NHL players.
it's going to be intense no matter what. That's for sure.
Yeah.
If you have the high quality of player that we're expecting.
Yep.
Man, the glove drop at the hockey drop, puck drop, that's insane. That is
Yeah, it
an
was crazy. Yeah.
absolute insane move. I mean, you want to talk about, I mean, it's like baseball. All right, guys, we're starting the game, and he doesn't even throw a pitch. He just runs at the batter. The batter, I mean, this is like, you try to mirror this to other leagues, like, what would this look like? I mean, this is insane. That juiced it up right there.
No, 100%. Yeah, it just set a tone, I think, for the game, especially in that first US Canada game. They're like, oh, like people were kind of unsure, and they're like, are the players gonna treat it like an all-star game? And it was like, no, they're really going for it, which made it a great spectacle.
Hmm.
So I think if you contrast that to the NBA All-Star game that was going on the same time, same week or whatever, and it was just completely the opposite, where like nobody really seemed to care or try that hard, which has kind of been the case with the NBA All-Star game. So I think the fact that the Four Nations was so successful and the players put in so much effort made the NBA All-Star game and maybe just the NBA in general look pretty bad given sort of like some of the player issues they're having with sitting out games and stuff.
So you guys help me out a little bit. I'm confused on why the tournament, why Canada won the tournament. I thought but they would have had to play the US again. Was it not a, because we only lost the one game to Canada, correct?
So it was a round robin format. So each team play each other um, once, and then based off of that, you do semis and final. So
Oh.
the way it was set up is we beat them in the round robin, and then we were actually favored going into the final. But then Canada beat us in the final. So they claimed the gold after all. So congratulations to the Canadians. I was watching the game myself in Canada with a lot of happy Canadians. I was pretending to be a Maplehead for the day, but no, I was happy for Canada honestly because they obviously hockey is such a big part of their culture. So I was kind of glad, even though obviously I'm American, but it was still a fun spectacle for sure.
Listen, when you got the presidents chirping in on their Twitter accounts on a hockey, like, I mean, that just shows you how big of a deal sports are. I
Yeah.
mean, Trudeau was,
Oh yeah.
chirping about the game after it. And that just shows sports are cool. People, we love sports. Sports are awesome.
No, yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, you can tell whenever an event transcends like that, and you get into the this huge national pride, then it certainly becomes even an even more bigger deal for sure. So that was cool to see.
Was
Yeah.
this the first one? I've never heard of
But
this.
yeah,
No, it
yeah,
was the
yeah.
first time they ever did it.
Four
Yeah.
nations face off.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like it'll be the last, given
Hey,
given how it went well.
kudos to the NHL for trying something new.
No, 1,000%. I think honestly, a lot of leagues can learn a pretty valuable lesson from
Hmm.
the NHL, and that's probably that don't be afraid to innovate and try something new, right? Format wise. And
Yeah.
maybe the NBA has gone too far with that, where I feel like they change the NBA All-Star game format and the dunk format or whatever, like every year. It never really seems to work, but for whatever reason, the NHL got it right this time, and obviously having player buy-in is probably the biggest thing that helps. But yeah,
Yeah.
kudos to them.
Yeah. So before you get off of hockey, I have to say, up here in DC, we're on Ovechkin watch.
Yes.
He has 12 goals to go to break the record. There's 24 games left. And so the projection is the people are betting on what game will he break the record. And the odds-on favorite right now is on April 10th at home against your Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh no, don't do it to us, Mike.
So,
Could
Wow.
that
yeah,
be a Stanley Cup first round preview?
you,
Hmm.
you get tickets today because they're only going to go up higher. They're up above $200 for nosebleeds, which
Well,
would
I
be
saw
really cheap.
he got a hat trick recently,
He
right?
got a
And
hat
so
trick over the weekend,
everyone's crunching the numbers to do the projections to see
which
when
got
he's
him to
going to do it.
13, and then the other night Capitals ended up losing, but they got a goal to make it a dozen.
Hmm.
Now, Mike, is this Gretzky's record?
Yes, that's Gretzky's record. Yeah.
It's 894, right? I think.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
a lot of goals.
So there's a
Well,
lot of expectations, a lot of and they were saying in the paper today that he's actually playing less minutes now, but he's getting in, he's finding the net.
yeah. Well, as long as he keeps doing that, then maybe great things will happen to break the record for the most points for the single franchise
Yeah.
of for Capitals history. But if these teams were to meet, let's say in the first round Stanley Cup playoffs, the whole Gerke family will be attending with Carolina Hurricanes gear on at the Capital One Bank Arena. That's how I see it. I
Wow,
want to
you're
hopefully make
calling
it.
your shot, huh?
Oh yeah, you know I am. Showing
All
up
right,
with
fair
Hurricanes
enough.
gear, and
I don't know
that's
if you've checked the standings, Jack, but the Capitals have quite a few more points than the Hurricanes right now. So
well, that's true. I mean, that's true. That's true.
I don't think they would play each other in round one. Yeah.
it could be an ECF matchup.
Yeah.
I'd be excited
I
for
mean,
that.
it's
Yeah.
possible. I mean, the way that I'm looking
Well,
at it,
the standings say, but to our credit, Jackson, the Hurricanes have had more playoff success, maybe you'd argue, the past couple seasons than than Washington. So
We haven't had any, so anybody,
exactly. So,
Yeah, well, you
particularly
guys
with
lost to the yeah, well, you guys lost to the Rangers last year, and I can certainly relate and feel your pain, but could compare to us. So
yeah,
yeah, well, we're 58 58 overall, but yeah, we're like one above the Hurricanes. So yeah, so Eastern Conference finals or first round possibility could happen. You just never know. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's definitely a possibility for that matchup to happen.
yeah. Well, it would be a great way to celebrate the 50th year of the Capitals.
there you go.
There you go. There you go. Like the sound of that.
And this year we're celebrating the 20th year of my Washington Nationals.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
How about that? How about that?
Yeah,
Yeah, they got to get some throwback Washington Senators gear going, maybe at some point, like your pennant there in
yeah.
the
Well,
in
they
the
play
background.
they play in Homestead Grays uniforms every year
Nice.
because they
Nice.
used to play at Griffith Stadium as well.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Very exciting. Well, I think with a couple minutes left, we should probably touch upon a little bit of basketball. We won't do a full March Madness preview because, like we mentioned, bracketology not quite there yet. But I do want to do a quick update on the rankings. I think we've mentioned previously how the men's AP Top 25 is pretty interesting this year, given it's weighted pretty heavily towards the SEC. Maybe we've seen a couple teams fall off as of late, but still in that top five, you've got three SEC teams, and then Duke and Houston as well, kind of making up the bulk there. So certainly we know a lot of these teams are going to be in the tournament, but as well securing that number one seed is always a massive advantage for sure, and having your path charted all throughout your region. And then as well, we have the ACC, SEC tournaments respectively coming up soon, which usually don't have too much of a ranking on terms of knocking a team off. Obviously, some teams on the bubble is really end up being affected the most by them, and possibly going on a nice run in the tournament is sort of in the conference tournament, respectively, can kind of bolster you and kind of make your case for tournament. A team like Duke, even if they make it to the semis or finals and don't win, they're still going to be the top ranked ACC team, just given the kind of lack of quality in that conference overall this year. But certainly an interesting year in college basketball for sure. I think we've kind of seen the dominance of a lot of the schools that we typically see, but a few new ones as well, like the likes of St. John's having a good year. They got old what's his name? Who's the old coach from the Celtics and Kentucky, Patino. He's rejuvenated St. John's up there, so the Johnnies are back in there. One for the old March Madness fans there, and I got the likes of Houston that are always there and thereabouts. Iowa State, Michigan State, a couple other lower ranked SEC Big Ten teams filling out. Wisconsin, Texas A&M, etc. So should be a bit of an interesting wide open year. You could argue
Yeah.
that Auburn and Duke are maybe a cut above, and obviously the player of the year for college basketball is going to come down to Cooper Flag and I think Broom from Auburn as well.
Yep.
I personally, I don't see a world where Cooper Flag doesn't deserve to win it, given the fact that he's doing it at a much younger age. And granted, you can say, it shouldn't really come into a factor, and maybe the SEC is tougher, but you still have plenty of tough games, and obviously everybody that plays Duke, he kind of has a target on his back, right? And he's performed, incredibly all throughout this year. Flag has, so he'd be my player of the year. Probably a little bit biased, obviously, but I think he's had a fantastic year. He's going to have a great tournament, I think, and his stock will only rise. But anything, Jackson, you're looking here the last couple weeks of the regular season. Obviously, we got one more Duke Carolina game
Right.
in Chapel Hill coming up here before the ACC tournament. But anything that you're keeping your eye on here?
Yes. Yes. For me, I'm um the SEC being the dominant league in college basketball, which nobody even saw coming or surprised, given the fact of teams that you are forgetting, such as Alabama, Florida is in the mix, Tennessee. You mentioned St. John's and Wisconsin and Iowa State. Those teams are also in play. So really the way I look at it is the ACC being down and along with the Big Ten and the SEC being one of the most dominant conferences so far in college basketball, really is worth staying for. And I think that really for me, for the SEC being the most dominant conference in college basketball, which has a lot saying for college game day, is hosting of down in Gainesville, Florida. So for this Saturday, so really it tells you a lot how great of a team they are, which nobody even saw coming. And yes, we know about Auburn and Duke and those two elite programs, and pretty much Duke being the only dominant team so far in in the ACC so far in their conference. But really the thing that really struck me the most so far to me is the SEC just being so more dominant really is really to me is the one that really surprised and really struck me from what we have seen so far this season.
Definitely, and I think the way I guess the SEC tournament might be end up being a bit of a slugfest with all those teams kind of fighting it out, and maybe I think looks like Auburn probably has a pretty I would say locked in cases being a number one seed in the tournament. But I mean they're 25-2. They've been pretty exceptional this year, so you'd have to say they're probably locked in for a number one seed unless they have a stinker of a SEC tournament. Florida looks to be in good position as well. Houston, Tennessee, Alabama, kind of thereabouts. So I think it's going to be sort of that in that 1 to 4 seed range. Will be really interesting. I think there's going to be some really competitive basketball once we get to the Sweet 16, Elite Eight stage in particular in the tournament, where a lot of these teams, high pressure, high stakes, neutral venue, are going to be playing each other. So I think this has the potential to be a really exciting March Madness. And obviously, we've got a loaded Duke team with Cooper Flag. Always gets a lot of national interest whenever there's a good Duke team entering into a tournament. So I think this has some really potential to be a really exciting March Madness tournament. So I'm looking forward to it.
Blake Lumberg, anything like to add before we leave? Obviously, let me just say this: the first four out, North Carolina, Indiana, SMU, Xavier are the teams that are really in danger of being in trouble. So unless anything happens, if they win the next two, if they beat Duke, which is not going to happen in the Duke Carolina matchup, for
They
that
can,
to happen, and they also need to win,
Knock on wood.
also need to win the next few games, the entirety ACC tournament, for them to be some more chaos and some possibility scenarios if they were to make that happen. But they have to win out the ACC tournament and their season-ending rivalry with the Tobacco Road rivalry against Duke, which is not going to happen. But they have to win out.
double down, baby.
He's
I
trying
like
to
it.
jinx. Are you
if,
trying to
if,
jinx us?
if they want to,
Jeez.
if they want to make a tournament, that's the way
Man of
I
It's in,
see it.
conviction.
But
it's in Chapel Hill,
it's
as
not going to
well.
happen.
So
I
Chapel
like it,
Bill
man.
out even.
But real quick, Blake, anything to watch or stood out for you on anything to keep your eye on for anything related to college basketball?
Yeah, I like that North Carolina is settling for mediocrity now. I like that they're not really going for championships anymore. They re-signed their coach after three
Shots
bubble years in a
fired.
row, and so they're not really dead set on championships anymore. They're just settling for
Hey, you know
average.
what? You know what, Blake? They're a football school now.
Jackson, the new Duke rivalry is actually Clemson. So the new Duke basketball rivalry is no longer Carolina, it's Clemson. How about that?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, Blake, I guess they're moving on to football season with Bill Belichick now.
Or this could be the biggest jinx of all time, and they're going to beat us in Chapel Hill. So maybe we should all be a little humble. But I think Duke will win that game. But we shall see. We shall see.
Time will tell,
Uh,
Blake.
I think that's about time here on Good Guy Sports. So thanks all for joining us, Jackson, Mike, and Blake. I think we did some good discussion here, and like I said, we'll have some even more interesting discussions to go forward as well once we get more into the spring season and playoffs start coming in, brackets start coming in. So stay tuned to Good Guy Sports for some exciting times in the future.
And
Thanks,
guys,
everyone.
Right.
Oh,
never forget the coach of the Charlotte FC. His name is Dean Smith. So never
Dean
forget that
Smith,
the Carolina
the
basketball.
Carolina
Never
Connection.
forget
Keep
that.
an eye out for that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye.